What's up, y'all? Another day, another theater pick coming your way. As a co-production with the Geffen Playhouse, Steppenwolf presents Noises Off by Michael Frayn and directed by Tony Award-winning ensemble member Anna D. Shapiro. It's about a theater ensemble doing its best to get through, I'ma just say it, a disaster of a play. And from lost props to line flubs, I dare you not to laugh. Me personally, I love a good meta comedy. Noises Off runs September 12th through October 27th. You can buy tickets starting at just $20 at steppenwolf.org. If you need another show to put on your calendar, I got you. Make sure you catch the full Monty at Paramount Theater in Aurora from August 21st through October 6th. Winner of 9 Tony Awards, the musical is about laid-off steelworkers trying to survive their economic troubles with a plan that takes them way out of their comfort zone. Get your tickets today at ParamountAurora.com or call the box office at 630-896-6666. But if you buy online, you can get $5 off per ticket, up to 4 tickets with promo code CityCast, all one word. Again, that's ParamountAurora.com and use the promo code CityCast. Today on CityCast Chicago, could Chicago's infamous parking meter deal get any worse? Do we know how big our street festivals really are? And did you catch Olympic fever this summer? All of that and more with executive producer Simone Alisea. It's Tuesday, August 13th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. Morning, Simone. How you feeling?
I'm all right, Jacoby. How are you?
I'm feeling good. Coming off of a semi-busy weekend. It was relaxing, but also busy, right? Tried a new restaurant, Brasero, over in West Town. As good as advertised, probably even a little bit better. What about you, Simone? You do anything great this weekend?
I was at the Bristol Renaissance Fair up at the border between, I think it's technically in Kenosha. I think it may be very technically in Wisconsin. But that was a boatload of fun. I had never been. And I spent so much money and bought all the pretty things. And I'm really excited to go the next time.
A nice weekend overall. I think we needed to start with something light because our first story today, let's just be real, is one of the biggest headaches in Chicago. It's one of the most angering stories every time I remind it that it exists. And of course, that's Chicago's infamous parking meter deal. Just last week, we decided to dig into the history. Shout out to Mick Dumke over at Block Club Chicago. And now the Tribune is out with a new story about another way it's costing the city money, a lawsuit that I didn't even realize was going on. Simone, tell us about some of the claims making their way through arbitration right now.
Yeah, so just as a reminder, if you didn't catch that episode, go back and listen because it's going to really kind of dig into all the history in here and how we ended up here. But the basics of the parking meter deal is in 2008, the city of Chicago essentially sold control over its parking meters, over its parking spaces to a private company for, just over $1 billion.
75 years, $1.2 billion for 75-year lease, y'all.
And the company since then has already recouped its investment, has been making a profit, raised our parking rates, and there's pretty much no way to get out of it. And the other thing is, and this is kind of what is at play here, the deal is sort of so ironclad, is sort of so written in such a way that pretty much any time the company loses money because of something the city does, the city then has to pay this company, Chicago Parking Meters.
All of the loopholes work for Chicago Parking Meters, LLC.
Yes, exactly. And so there's this lawsuit that's been ongoing and has been going through arbitration. And there are a couple claims here that could cost the city. I think the easiest one to understand has to do with former Mayor Lori Lightfoot's decision to pause parking enforcement during the early months of the COVID-19 pandemic, talking, early mid-2020. I think it's pretty easy to see you pause parking enforcement. The company argues that is, costs them money, right? If you're not enforcing the parking that we own. Arbitrators awarded Chicago parking meters $2 million plus interest. So that is something that the city is going to have to pay. I think kind of just like a wild addendum to this thing is, yes, Lightfoot announced that the city was pausing parking enforcement, but a Chicago Tribune analysis from September 2020 showed that they were still issuing tickets downtown. It was still happening. All in all, I think it's a very, the whole idea was to, alleviate. There's a real move, I think, in 2020, right, to alleviate fines and fees. Yep. Also, theoretically, there weren't as many people going downtown to park, because of, the stay-at-home orders, et cetera. So, so that's one thing. The second claim also happened during the pandemic, also happened under Mayor Lori Lightfoot, but is a little bit more complicated. Basically, what happened was in late 2021, the city took ownership of some 4,000 spots while sort of the value of the system was low. Then they gave a bunch of those back to Chicago parking meters when the values were high. This netted the city, money in new revenue and credits that under the deal, et cetera. However, because this move had an adverse effect overall on the system's value, the city now probably has to pay the company a bunch of money, likely somewhere north of $100 million due to decreased values. And this gets at kind of what I was talking about is basically, right, there are spots that are, and we talked about this in this conversation with Block Club's Mick Dunkey, right, there are spots that are basically entirely owned and controlled by this private company. They get all the revenues every time you're paying the meter, right? You're paying the company. There are some spots where the city gets the bulk of the revenue, right? When you're paying the meter, a lot of it is going to the city, some of it is going to the company. And it is the negotiation of how many spots does each side have, and how did they acquire those spots that becomes at issue in this deal. Now it's sort of up to the Johnson administration to defend the city against these claims. They may be able to cover costs. They might not have to pay $100 million out of pocket, but they might have to give the parking meter company more control over more spaces. So either way, it's probably going to cost the city of Chicago.
At the end of the day, which is at the crux of, again, why this deal is so bad. It's because the majority of the brunt that has been faced as rates have risen, as we've seen parking meters pop up across the city, falls back on us. But then to find out that, again, this might cost us more land, more spaces given up to the parking meter company, that we already have to pay them when a parking meter goes out of service for a street festival or for construction. I feel like every time we see a story, it just sort of reminds us just how screwed we are in this deal, how effective the lawyers for CPM were in constructing this.
Yeah, it's interesting. We got an email from a listener, Keith from Uptown, who, was sort of trying to ask, where would Chicago be if we hadn't signed the meter? And would it actually be better or worse? Right. Part of the argument and part of the reason that then Mayor Daley and City Council and his supporters sort of said that this is a net good is another reason was, in addition to getting $1 billion during the recession when Chicago needed money, was
they were going to get a modernized, updated, interconnected system that they didn't have to pay for, that they didn't have to manage anymore.
They had a bunch of parking meters that didn't work, right? And now they could, instead of spending money to, pay for parking meters that work, now someone else can do it. And so Keith, in his email, asked the question, if we hadn't made this deal, would we be able to pay for parking through a mobile app, or would we still be feeding quarters into meters in the year of our Lord 2024? Would there be any political will to charge an appropriate rate for people who store their privately owned cars on public land, even just for an hour, right? Would the rates, this gets to the issue of parked cars using the public curb space, if there's an economist out there who can tell us, what would it have taken to actually to do any of that? I don't know. I don't know how quantifiable those questions are. But my thing is, if the city is going to charge for parking. I'm not even upset that the rates are high. That part doesn't even bother me so much. I just wish the city could be making money off of it. That's what I want. I just think that, like, if even if I have to pay $7 an hour for parking downtown, my hope is that then goes to the Department of Transportation to put in bike lanes in my neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? Like, that would be my hope. And that, can't really happen to the extent that we would want under this deal.
So maybe you out here trying to live a greener life. Maybe you want to reduce the amount of food waste heading to Chicago's landfills and you're thinking about composting. If so, you got to try Waste Not. Here's how it works. Waste Not gives you a 5-gallon bucket with an airtight lid. That's where you're going to toss your food scraps, cooked or raw, paper products like napkins and coffee filters, and anything else that's certified compostable. Then the Waste Not team comes and collects your full bucket in electric service vehicles, might I add, and they leave you a clean, empty one. This happens every week or every other week, depending on your needs. Plus, for my gardeners out there, y'all gonna be able to get back some of the finished compost you helped create without ever having to deal with all the gross parts of the process. So give Waste Not a try and check out wastenotcompost.com. CityCast Chicago listeners can test the service with a free month by using promo code CityCastCompost. So for the last 13 days, I don't know about y'all, but I've kind of been swept up in the Olympics, right? This first round of the games may be over. We still got the Paralympics in 2 weeks. But I've been caught up in the Olympics hype more than I've been since probably 2008 in the Beijing Olympics. The U.S. team brought home 126 medals overall. Illinois was definitely represented with some 36 athletes across various sports. I am all for, like, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm all for people who look at the Olympics as just another opportunity for like nationalist propaganda. And I try not to participate in it. But there is something about seeing just the best athletes, some of the best athletes in the world all coming together and just like throwing down, and like one mistake can be the difference in 3 years of training. It's something about that is exhilarating to me. Simone, what about you? Did you catch the Olympics bug?
I gotta be real honest. My entire interaction with the Olympics was via meme and online content. The Olympics are fun, right? It's a good time. You get to see people, the top performers in something, perform at a peak. For me, it is definitely one of those things that, like, I do not make a point of watching the Olympics. I don't have any sports or athletes I am particularly attached to. I often don't go spend a lot of time researching, because I think that's the real thing about the Olympics. It's the story, right? What is the story that is being told about this athlete or this event or this, particular moment? I don't spend a lot of time looking for stories.
That's a good point. There were so many to be had in these Olympics.
That's what I heard.
Across the board. And I think that definitely grabbed me. I do think also just by nature of working from home, like the way that the Olympics embraced like streaming technology and the app was very organized and letting you know when things were happening. Like they didn't gatekeep all of the performances to like prime time at the end of the day. I just thought it was easier to watch the Olympics. And some of those stories were there. I'm thinking like Shamir Little, who went to Lindblom and, grew up in Chicago. That 4x400 relay race was one of the most exciting races the entire 2 weeks of competition. And yeah, just so many of those team wins just like pulled me in a way that I usually am not. I found myself watching rugby at different times. And, like you said, the story matters there. One of the rugby players just kept popping up on my TikTok. And I was like, damn, she seems really cool. I'm going to watch one of these games. And it was amazing. I found myself watching more track and more gymnastics because of just seeing these people pop up on my social feed a little bit more, made me a little bit more tuned in.
I was just gonna say one of my favorite like little factoids too was that at this games you had 49% of competitors who were women, which is huge, right? Like this is, this is a really big deal to be so close to full gender parity.
They said they would have been the third winningest countries by themselves.
If American women had been their own country, they would have placed third among all nations in the medal tally for the fourth straight games. So it's not just women who are dominating at the Olympics. It's American women in particular.
I was going to list off a few of them just from the area. You had Laura Carlini of Aurora winning a silver in U.S. women's volleyball, Dana Recchi of Riverside, and Bartlett's Kelsey Robinson Cook. All of them were on the U.S. women's volleyball team. Kennedy Blades finished second in women's wrestling in her Olympic debut. And then we talked a little bit about Shamir Little as well. The Chicago Tribune did a nice write-up. Shout out to the homie over there, Stacey St. Clair, who every Olympic cycle, at least since we've been a podcast, has been on the beat and has done such amazing work bringing those stories to us. I did not expect myself to care going into it. I watched last year's World Championships. I barely paid attention to the Olympic trials, but once it started, I just got caught up in so many things. I saw archery for the first time, fencing for the first time, diving and shooting for the first time, watched a water polo match. I watched way more sports than I expected just in the background.
But Jacoby, what about that breakdancing?
That was ridiculous. I saw somebody saying this was the first time I ever watched the Olympics and thought I could actually go out there and do that. I could do that. Obviously, there were some really amazing breakdancers out there, but they got overshadowed by the foolishness that was taking place out there. That felt so anti-Black and disrespectful. Like I felt like it felt like this is what hip hop is. 1, 2, 3. Yes, that's hip hop. Make it hip hop, right? I was like, this hurts.
That was one of the wildest things I've ever seen. What was your favorite Olympics meme?
Ooh.
I think mine actually was the Norwegian swimmer who was obsessed with the chocolate muffins and just kept posting TikToks about that. To me was like peak online. That was like peak Vine. You know what I mean? Like that felt like a throwback to me of like what the internet is supposed to be for.
Yeah, man, like again, I think seeing all of these athletes on TikTok doing viral content, sharing what the village looked like, stealing muffins and packing bread. The American Olympic athlete who she went viral because she basically signed up for a bunch of free healthcare in the Olympic Village. Like she got an eye exam, she got new glasses, she got a pap smear, she had a dentist appointment, and they basically like, we feel like you're just here for what's that meme from?
Oh yeah, the zip line. It's from Tim Robinson. We feel like you're just here for the zip line.
And Ronnie, I feel like you're just here for the zip line.
Feel like you're just here for the zip line, but they were like, you're just here for the free healthcare. Like getting that level of behind the scenes. Again, we've obviously had social media through the Rio games in 2016, the COVID games in 2021, but this one, it just felt like it hit on all cylinders for me from a social aspect, getting to see that much up and close. It was really nice.
I gotta tell you, Jacoby, I've never once cared about the Olympics.
Oh,
I cannot be bothered.
I feel that, but I cared in 2008 for sure. I cared in 2008.
Literally, I remember like every time I've played bar trivia, there's inevitably an Olympics question because that's the sport that like trivia people know about and that I still don't know. Like I still get them wrong.
I could be the Olympics person on your team. I think I could do it. I end up watching so much content about world records, the evolution of sports. I know more about the javelin and how they've had to change it 2 or 3 times in modern history because the world record got so close to the javelin flying out of the track and hitting somebody in the stands. They were like, ooh, we're about 5 meters from this mug getting off. We need to make it less aerodynamic and harder to throw. And they've had to do that like twice in the last like 60 years. I don't know why I know that now, Simone. I have no idea, but I do. One more thing before we get out of here. We want to give another round of thank yous to our sponsor, Revolution Brewing. Because of them, we've been bringing you this weekly festival corner all summer long where we talk about some of our favorite festivals. We give you tips. And this weekend is one of the city's, let's just call it more relaxed weekends, I think. You got the Glenwood Avenue Arts Fest in Rogers Park. Right? I went to Printers Row Art Fest last week. Nothing like a good stroll looking at some good art. You got Sangria Fest in Humboldt Park. You got Taste of Pullman. This is also the last weekend to catch the Illinois State Fair in Springfield with all of their butter and cheese and funnel cake going on down there, just to give them a little bit of an honorable mention. Simone, anything you're really looking forward to this weekend?
I gotta say, Glenwood Avenue Arts Fest is always a great vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's such a chill walk. I love all of those businesses along Glenwood Avenue in Rogers Park. I used to live up there, and so it's sort of near and dear to my heart. That I definitely have my eye on this weekend.
No, I like that. I've been to Taste of Pullman the last couple of years, and I like getting out there. They usually have like dance lessons. Like people be out there stepping. The barbecue is always good. It's a good time. But we've also got some festival news we want to talk about, especially as we're getting to mid-August. A new investigation by Block Club and CBS Chicago is looking at attendance estimates at our summer festivals and some of the safety implications that come along with it. Simone, what exactly did they find here?
Yeah, so this is really interesting because I think everyone maybe remembers the Vegandale Festival from earlier this summer. That was kind of a really scary moment for a lot of people, turned into kind of a near stampede with a lot of people trying to get in and out, and very, very scary moment. And, Block Club and CBS were looking into as part of getting your festival permit, you have to give the city an estimation for how many people you expect to come. And what they found was not just at Vegandale, but at many, many fests across the city, the amount that organizers were saying were going to come on their permit was way, way, way lower than what they advertised on in their marketing material. So at Vegandale, for example, the crowd estimate was 16,000 for the permit, but they were marketing that there were going to be 30,000 people, almost double what the permit said. Pride Fest had, I think, maybe some of the biggest discrepancy where it was like, oh, on the permit, they said they were expecting 5,000 people, but in marketing materials, they were saying that, 100,000 people come to Pride Fest.
I don't even know how you could give a permit to Pride Fest saying 5K. If you just look at it, just Google, it's like, that's not how many people is out there.
Yeah.
Even still, for some of these numbers, Midsummer, 18K on the permit, 80K in advertising.
Right.
Even if you were saying 18K was for one of the 3 days, that's still another 26,000 people you're not accounting for in your advertising if you're also looking at that as your total number. And so, again, I get that for someone, like if you're trying to market this to someone attending, me saying, 100K, 80K, that just, you're trying to say, look how big of a deal we are. But like you said, the implications here when like the fire department, for example, is going off of your permit number when they're thinking about personnel and the likelihood that something can happen here and sort of preparedness, it really could cause a hassle or a headache.
Yeah, that's the whole reason. Like the whole reason you have to put this on your permit to the city is so that the city can determine what kind of resources are needed to maintain safety and to determine like if your other organizations, like, are you properly staffed? Like what kind of permit are you getting? Right. So that all that has to do with what the attendance has something to do with all of that. It's interesting because when they talk to the police department said that, typically we work with organizers directly and we're kind of having conversations with them. We're not really relying on the permit estimates to determine, what kind of work we're going to do or what kind of overtime we're going to pay and that kind of stuff. But the fire department does to some degree rely on that number. And it's interesting because also at sort of as a part of this, you have some of these big festival companies, these companies that organize many of the festivals across Chicago, two of them being Star Events and Special Events Management. Black Club and CBS talked to leadership at Special Events Management, and they came out and said, like, these marketing numbers are like not correct, and there's clearly something has broken down in the communication between us and marketing, and we're going to change that. So they sort of admitted to that there was sort of an issue there. But I think it is. Crowd estimates are always fascinating, and as a journalist who has covered big events, and like, I know how hard it can be to estimate crowds. And there are, whole mathematicians whose job is to like come up with calculations to see what are the crowd flow dynamics and what is that going to be like. It also gets to a conversation we had early on in our festival coverage, which is, in many ways, these festivals kind of have to get bigger to keep it, getting people to come, to keep up with rising costs. Like, they have to offer more, they have to get more people through the door, they have to be more aggressive about the suggested donations to kind of so that there's enough people that the local businesses and the local vendors who are featured are getting sort of the bang for their buck. But there is sort of a question about sustainability and like what is really the purpose of these festivals? Is it to be these like really big, massive productions, or like is there really any room in our modern day for the smaller neighborhood festival as we kind of conceive of it?
But we also talked about some of our favorite festivals leaving, like our Chicago street festivals. Like, are they getting too big, or are they getting too expensive? And it seems in some respects that it seems like all of these festivals are exiting street festival territory and entering into sort of more mega festival territory.
I think for me, as a journalist, the other thing too is like, I just want to know how many people are out there, right? I want to know how many people are out there so I can tell the rest of Chicago how many people are out there so that you can go and plan your day. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of need to know how big something is going to be to know what the vibe is. And so that's the other balance here too that I think is important to remember as well.
I want to give another huge thank you to our executive producer, Samal Alisea. It is my pleasure to always be here with you, my friend.
Hey, thanks, Jacoby.
And for the rest of y'all, please remember that CityCast Chicago does not start and stop with the podcast. Head over to our website, chicago.citycast.fm. There you're going to find some amazing articles, some neighborhood guides, and you can subscribe to our daily newsletter, Hey Chicago. Some good news. Fan Expo is back in Chicago this weekend at the Stevens Center in Rosemont. 70 to 75,000 anime, horror, comics, and gaming fans all together to celebrate their favorite things in pop culture. I will drop a link in the show notes where you can find tickets and all of the special guests, folks like Mark Hamill, Giancarlo Esposito, Marissa Tomei, and more. Again, check the link in the show notes for all the information. As always, we appreciate you for listening and reading. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow. We'll talk to you then. Peace.